Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Do want to thank our friends at Window World Boise, windowworldboise.com, for sponsoring this portion of the program. Thank you very much. Locally owned, veteran-owned. They do such an outstanding job. Now, again, we are waiting for Blaine Gonzatti to join us from the Idaho Family Policy Council Center. Blaine is a good dude. We look forward to that. To talk about this decision. So that's one of the reasons why, and it's always a challenge, if you will, when we have the guests on. So hopefully we'll get him on, and we'll hear from Blaine from the Idaho Family Policy Center, not Council, Center. Thank you very much for that. And when we do, we'll put him on talking about this massive decision concerning Idaho's right to life law. And when you think about somebody like Blaine has actually written the law. He's been at the forefront. He's faced criticism. And I will tell you, that is an amazing thing. I would try him one more time, Bo, on that. And if he's not there, then once again, the show must go on. Well, what do we pay you for, Kevin? If you have a guest, you just let the guest talk. And the guest talks all the time. Yeah, thank you very much. I get that. See, you and I have been together long enough that you don't even have to criticize me. I actually do it for you. One thing that we have been discussing, gas prices. Now, here we live in one of the best states ever, except when it comes to air quality, except when it comes to what we went through for the past month. There were no blue skies, right? No blue skies at all. And here we have blue skies over the weekend. Hopefully that will continue. Hopefully we'll continue to get the fires out. But gas prices in our state have increased once again by 7 cents per gallon. Diesel prices have also risen by 7 cents. A month ago, regular was $4.05, diesel was $4.76. Now, a year ago, how about this one? Before the war, $3.51 and $3.93. By the way, the lowest fuel price is the Costco on Cole Road. You heard it here first from Kevin Miller. Joining us now, our great friend Blaine Gonzatti from the Idaho Family Policy Center, not Council. That's why we have Blaine on, because he gets the things right. Blaine, welcome back. Great to have you here at 580 KIDO, sir.
Hey,
hello, Blaine.
On, Kevin. I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, bro. Always good to have you on. I wish, sir, we're under better circumstances, but can you give us your unfiltered, uncensored reaction to what happened in Judge Windmill's court, sir?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Judge Windmill is a Clinton appointee to the federal district court, and he's famous for a whole bunch of things. Legislating from the bench is kind of his pastime. 2013, he blocked Idaho's law banning abortions for babies that can feel pain. In 2018, he's the federal judge who forced the Department of Corrections to provide that sex change surgery to Adrienne Edmo, the gender-confused male who was serving time in state prison for sexually assaulting a minor boy. And then in 2023, he famously blocked our Vulnerable Child Protection Act that protects kids who are confused in their gender from sex change drugs and surgeries. Of course, he was overturned at the Supreme Court on that. So just last week, he issued another one of these wonderful decisions in which he attempted to invent a new right to abortion in the U.S. Constitution, even though the Supreme Court has said in Dobbs that no such right to abortion exists. And so here, Judge Windmill says that a woman has a right to abortion in cases of mental health, specifically when she threatens to kill herself if she is going to continue with the pregnancy. Of course, that's a massive, massive loophole. It will result in babies dying in the state of Idaho. And we need to recognize this for what it is. It's just another attempt to find a right to abortion in the U.S. Constitution where no such right exists.
Yeah, it's very strange. He's talking about the 14th Amendment, this, that, and the other. And again, I want to thank you, Blaine, for giving us the history of Judge Windmill, because he's been consistent in his decisions for many, many years.
Yeah, that's right. And, you know, Kevin, it's such a radical opinion that he released last week that I don't imagine the Supreme Court or the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals is going to tolerate this ruling for long. Attorney General Raul Labrador has already promised to appeal this immediately up to the Ninth Circuit. I assume the Ninth Circuit will act quickly to overturn Judge Windmill. Certainly the Supreme Court will. I mean, we could be before the Supreme Court pretty fast based off of how extreme Judge Windmill's decision is. But every person deserves equal protection of our laws. Every child deserves equal protection of our laws. Every preborn child has a right to life. Every child, even if that child's mother is struggling with mental health. And ultimately, abortion is not a form of mental health treatment. Abortion is a procedure that ends a preborn child's life. And women who are struggling with abortion, they need mental health treatment. They don't need the enduring trauma that always follows an abortion. And so, again, this decision is not rooted in law. This decision is not rooted in justice. It's another activist opinion that's attempting to create a right to abortion where no such right exists.
Yeah, and again, this is sadly just the beginning of the process, and hopefully the appeals will be heard and this will be overturned. Again, Judge Windmill, again, Blaine, as you've said here at 580 KIDO, he's had a pattern of this for quite some time and really had his way until Dobbs was overturned. And I guess he didn't get the memo that the Death Star has been blown up.
No, that's right. Here in Idaho, we have two laws that protect preborn babies. We have the heartbeat law, which kicks in at 21 days post-conception, and it creates civil liability for physicians who perform unlawful abortions. We have the Defense of Life Act, which kicks in at 14 days post-conception, and that creates criminal liability for physicians who perform abortions. Thankfully, Judge Windmill's decision, his court order, only binds Attorney General Raul Labrador and the Ada County prosecutor from enforcing the criminal provision of the Defense of Life Act. So that means that any physician who performs an abortion in cases of mental health here in Idaho could still be held civilly liable under our heartbeat law. And we do have a legal firm within IFPC called the IFPC Legal Center, and we're standing ready to enforce the law, enforce the heartbeat law, hold any physician accountable who performs an abortion in case of mental health and tries to use Judge Windmill's decision to justify performing an illegal abortion, because that's what this decision is, right? It's a lawless court order. It only binds some state officials and a county prosecuting attorney from enforcing one portion of our abortion law. But thankfully, we have a whole bunch of laws on the books, including the heartbeat law, that we can still use to hold physicians accountable.
I did see that, Blaine. So let's go to the broader picture. Why is Idaho seemingly in the national spotlight? Blaine, as you've defended the state and others like you, when Dobbs came down, Joe Biden went after Idaho before any other state.
Yeah, it's because of the great results that we've seen from the pro-life laws that we have here in Idaho. Since the heartbeat law took effect on August 12, 2022, we've seen a 99.7% reduction in the statewide rate of abortions performed by physicians in the state of Idaho. A 99.7% reduction in the abortion rate. I mean, that's huge. Obviously we are dealing with a whole bunch of threats to life and attacks on life, and we have a long ways to go. Our laws aren't perfect. There are still loopholes in our laws. We're still dealing with a deluge of chemical abortion pills, black market chemical abortion pills that are flooding our state. We have to take care of that. We have other improvements that need to be made to the laws as well, but we really have seen a seismic shift here in Idaho since these laws took effect. We've seen thousands of babies who have been saved as a result of these laws, and the intolerant progressive left doesn't want to see that happen. And they want to ensure that women are able to, procure abortion on demand in Idaho. Our laws don't allow that to happen. And so, of course, their plan B is always to run to the courts and get an activist federal judge to impose his will on the entire state, despite the fact that the state legislature has made clear that Idaho will be a place where preborn life is protected.
Our great friend Blaine Canzotti joining us, idahofamily.org, their website. Blaine, let's go to the picture that you and others in the pro-life community have been involved in, and this is the Prop 1 issue, sir. How do you see it?
Yeah, so, Prop 1, the deceptively named Reproductive Freedom and Privacy Act, it is radically pro-abortion. It's far too extreme for Idaho. The bottom line is that it would legalize late-term abortions well past the point that babies can feel pain. Really, it would legalize abortion all the way up until the 8th month of pregnancy, which is far more extreme than anything that was allowed under Roe v. Wade. But in addition to that, it would eliminate the parental consent requirement that we've had here in Idaho for decades, ensuring that parents know and are involved if their child is to get an abortion. That would make abortion the only medical procedure that a child can get without parental involvement, which is wild. It would also eliminate all of the women's health protections and the patient protections that Idaho legislators have adopted over the decades, protections like requiring a physician to perform an abortion. So, and this is going to sound crazy, Kevin, but if the Reproductive Freedom and Privacy Act were to be adopted by the voters in November when it's on the general election ballot, it would actually allow chiropractors and eye doctors and orthodontists to perform abortions or to prescribe chemical abortion pills. It would also allow staff at abortion clinics to perform abortions. And that's because of the way in which the ballot initiative would replace the term physician with the term healthcare provider. And any licensed healthcare provider under state law, which includes non-physicians like chiropractors or orthodontists or dentists, would be allowed to perform or provide abortions if the ballot initiative were to pass. So this is super, super radical. Obviously, we hope that Idaho voters see through it. It's very deceptively worded. The language of the ballot initiative itself is very tricky in how it tries to convince voters that it does something it doesn't. A lot of their messaging is focusing on IVF or birth control, which are already legal under Idaho law. The ballot initiative is not needed to allow women to access those types of medical services. And so it's a bait and switch, very tricky, and we hope that Idaho voters see right through it.
Well, and again, back to your website, idahofamily.org, you address the situation perpetrated by the media here that we're losing doctors.
Yeah, so we've all heard the narrative for over a year now that OBs are fleeing the state of Idaho because of our pro-life laws. And in particular, there's one study that has been trumpeted by the media as proof of this claim. That's the Boise State University study that was published in JAMA, the JAMA Medical Journal, last summer, which claimed that about 35% of Idaho OBs left the state following our pro-life laws taking effect. What we've learned over the last year as IFBC began looking into this is that the BSU study is actually built on a foundation of lies. We requested the data from BSU about a year ago, trying to figure out what data they were using to make their claims that were published in the JAMA study article. And BSU provided one document to us, and that document included a whole bunch of inaccuracies and errors in the underlying data set, including negative doctors in some counties. Now, I don't know about you, Kevin. I have no idea how a county could have negative doctors, but those types of data errors skew the results, and ultimately they went forward even with those data errors, and they published the study findings in the JAMA Journal. They refused to provide us with the other documents that we requested through the public records law, like the internal review documents that they used, peer review documents, other data that they used as they were coming to their conclusions. Ultimately, ISBC a couple weeks ago filed a lawsuit to compel Boise State University to make public that data they've been unlawfully withholding from us and unlawfully withholding from the public. It's a weird place to be in where you have people who are ostensibly public health professionals making claims, but unwilling to substantiate those claims with the data, unwilling to release the data publicly for, third-party independent review. But long story short, we do believe that the JAMA study is flawed. It relied on an inaccurate data set, and we're going to hold them accountable, and we're going to get that data. We have no doubt that the court will compel Boise State to release that data publicly, and we're going to find out what the truth is.
Yeah, it's fascinating, Blaine. By the way, you can get that article at idahofamily.org here at 580 KIDO, but the idea that they would publish a study and then they wouldn't release everything, and it's quite a detailed report that you have here going through things that Here we have this public university. They're supposed to be informing the public, and clearly they're not allegedly giving you all the information that you need.
Yeah, and their claims seem to be contradicted by other sources. So an example of this is the Idaho State Medical Board obviously maintains medical licensure information for doctors. And according to the Idaho Medical Board, the number of actively licensed physicians who specialize in OB services has increased by 20% since our pro-life laws took effect. Now, there are limitations with the data that is maintained by the Idaho State Board of Medicine. Not all actively licensed physicians actually practice. Not all of them practice full time. So there are limitations there. But from the best that we can tell, the State Medical Board licensure data is the best data available on the number of physicians who practice and specialize in OB services in the state. So we feel pretty confident that the fact that the number of licensed OBs is increasing, that is a fatal blow to the claims made by the JAMA article study authors, the BSU professors, that are responsible for the false claims. Ultimately, again, we're going to get their data set. We're going to find out what's going on. We'll make that public and ensure that the truth is known, because voters need to know whether this narrative that doctors are leaving the state, voters need to know whether that's true or not, especially with the ballot initiative coming up.
Well, and again, you have the media without any really credibility, just regurgitating that story. So, Blaine, let's get back to this. Is this the biggest issue ever when we're talking about Prop 1 this November, sir?
Yeah. Again, Kevin, we have seen over the last several years since our laws took effect, thousands of preborn babies who have been saved as a result of these laws. Hundreds, thousands of women and families who may have chosen abortion have been saved from the heartache, from the stress, from the regret that abortion causes. We need to fight like heck to ensure that our state remains a place where babies are protected, where women and families are protected. And our laws currently do that. And Prop 1 would undo all the progress we've made. So we need to do everything we can to ensure that this does not become law when voters decide in November.
On an unrelated question, here you are advocating for, I got two left if you don't mind, sir. You're advocating for families, you're sticking up for people, and then you have people calling you the Christian nationalist and all sorts of things. And I'm going, I know, Blaine, I know the Idaho Family Policy Center. I can't believe that, but it's the smear tactics used against you. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? The way in which the intolerant and progressive left has redefined terms and weaponized terms, it creates an environment where it's hard to have a real conversation with people. So, their definition of Christian nationalist is simply someone who believes that biblical values should influence government. And of course, going all the way back to our founding as a nation, our founding as a state, our founding fathers at both the national and state level believed that biblical values should influence government, that biblical morality is an objective source of truth, and that when we recognize God's principles and law, people flourish and we get to experience the blessings of freedom and live under God's favor. And so by that definition, I think most of our founding fathers would have been considered Christian nationalists. Do we want to impose our religion on anyone? Of course not, right? But we understand that biblical values do help a nation flourish. As Psalm 33:12 says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And so, we're unapologetic about that. We are a Christian ministry, and we're willing to take those hits, take our lumps. But we understand that a nation thoroughly influenced by biblical principles is going to be one in which people flourish. And that's something that we can't be ashamed of.
And we'll get you out of here on this one. Long before Pete Hegseth was Pete Hegseth, but he was Pete Hegseth, he visited Idaho supporting you guys. Any Pete Hegseth stories, Secretary of War stories that you'd like to share with us? I mean, I remember when you got him and we had you on promoting that show, man. That was huge. It still is huge to this day.
Yeah, yeah. And Pete Hegseth, he is a very, very good man, a strong believer, person of faith. He understands what it looks like for America to take a leadership role in this world, and that's important because America, or the world is better because America is a leader in it. And so we're grateful for all that he's doing at the Department of War. I love Secretary Hegseth's Trump impressions. He gave some Trump impressions at our event a few years back, and now I'm sure you all have seen the videos that have gone viral on Twitter the last couple of weeks of some of Hegseth's Trump impressions. They're just great. They're wonderful. But grateful that he is leading the military at this time.
Well, I mean, it's not a short trip to Idaho, so that was huge getting him here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Blaine, if people would like more information, what can they do, sir?
IdahoFamily.org. Sign up for our email newsletters. You'll get our action alerts, which are opportunities for you to send emails to your legislators telling them to support the bills that do indeed promote human flourishing. Also, stopprop1.org. Stopprop1.org is the website for the Vote No campaign on Prop 1. And we have a really great ad there that you can watch explaining the ins and outs of Prop 1. Share that video with your friends so they understand how radical and extreme Prop 1 is. Encourage them to vote against it. Stopprop1.org.
Blaine Conzetti, as always, we appreciate you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin, for having me.
Appreciate that. Blaine doing the great work there. We'll get your reaction next. Kevin Miller, 580-KIDO. Also, do want to thank Blaine Conzetti for joining us, IdahoFamily.org. And, it's interesting. Here we have the midterms going on in Idaho. Be interesting to see how it plays out. Prop 1 really is the main issue. No Republican appears to be in jeopardy. But I'm not going to tell you who said this, but do you agree with this person's message?
My name is not raising your gas prices. My name is not the reason we're in an illegal war. My name is not the reason you can't afford your health care. My name is not the reason that you can't afford your rent or your insurance. Their bad ideas are. And so if the best they've got against getting money out of politics, putting money in pockets, passing Medicare for all, is to point to my name and say that they can't pronounce it, then I think we're going to have a pretty good time over the next 13 weeks prosecuting the case against a kind of politics that is corrupting, and devastating the future of our country. We've got an opportunity, I think, though, to think beyond that. I think people are sick and tired of this politics of hatred. They're sick and tired of politicians who are interested in exploiting government for their own means, which is exactly what Mike Rogers did while he was in Congress, making $14 million after he left to move to a McMansion in Florida, which is what Donald Trump is doing now. And we're offering an alternative, a doctor who rebuilt the health department, eliminated medical debt, put Narcan in vending machines for free, and yes, happens to be named Abdurrahman Mohammed Sayed.
That was a lot.
Yes, happens to be named Abdurrahman Mohammed Sayed.
Pretty good with the rapid fire and the pronunciation.
This happens to be named Abdurrahman Mohammed Sayed.
And you could see why he has that charisma. And look, he's doing it the legal, the political way. Probably not the most polite way when it comes to dealing with females or people that disagree with him or Israel or the Jewish people. But what he's saying is really the playbook that the Democrats are using. People say, well, the war is illegal. Well, no, the war is not illegal. They talk about the high gas prices and everything else. Everybody is feeling the pain. A wonderful, wonderful masterclass in making abstract issues concrete and focusing in on your opponent, even when you, through your name and everything else, might have a very different appeal than a guy named Mike Rogers. Is that racial? Is that ethnic? No. The guy is making a brilliant campaign ad where you should look past everything. Now, here's the skinny on this. The liberal loons are going to talk about, guys, it's going to be great. I'm going to go into Congress. With all due respect to our friends in Congress, what has Congress really done? They're on vacation again. Have they balanced the budget? Apparently now the national debt out of control. You want to talk about derailing the president's beloved stock market. Continue to run up the national debt. One place you won't run up your debt is Window World Boise, windowworldboise.com. Their number, 614-3188. That's 614-3188. Windows, patio doors, siding, Boise's exterior remodeler. Locally and veteran-owned right there on Chinden. Honk, honk. As you're driving by Window World Boise. Limited time only, 0% interest for 18 months. Your beautiful home, your protection starts here. Proudly made in America. Idahoans working for you right here in Idaho. Maybe you need an entry door. How about some siding, patio doors, and yes, they do windows. And it's not going to be here, there. No, this is what they cost. This is the warranty. This is the process. If you have a problem, they will handle it. Very low key, not high. You don't want, those are nice people too. But I can tell you, I made the investment to put new windows in, and I'm so happy that I did that, courtesy of our friends at Window World Boise. windowworldboise.com. Let's get you to work safely and on time at 580 KIDO. Then it's Fox News on your home for Fox News, 580 KIDO.
There were questions about morale and questions about how these sailors at sea for, 200 days plus and counting, I do believe. And now the USS Washington is going to leave Japan and head for the Persian Gulf and give it relief. General, how significant was that visit, and what's important, do you think, that we should understand?
Yeah, well, first of all, I did talk to Admiral Cooper. He had a great visit with the troops there. They feel good about what's happening here. I've never seen such misrepresentation in the media of the actual facts that took place. A soldier fell overboard and was rescued. They were claiming that multiple soldiers were committing suicide. Not soldiers, sailors. I don't want to insult the sailors by calling them soldiers. But the reality is the misrepresentation has really been quite significant. I mean, I understand people disagree with the war. I got that. And those arguments should be made. But I'm glad Cooper went there. He wrote a great article in the Wall Street Journal op-ed that's worth reading to give you his assessment of what's took place. And it's insulting to these troops. I mean, they've been there for a long time, standing tall, representing the United States. And that's what they volunteered to do. And when they're doing something like that, they really feel good about the meaning and the purpose of what it's about, and their families are sacrificing as well. I mean, we should be very proud of them, wrapping our arms around them figuratively in terms of what they've accomplished. Well done. They're heading home to their families. It's good news.
All right, General Jack Keane, thank you as we get started on this Monday.
Thank you, sir.
And there we have it. Bill Hemmer and Dana Perino, 580-5436, 580 KIDO, Fox News. On the radio right here, you know, it's pretty wild when you think about now we're getting the other side of the story. I don't know if anybody caught Admiral Mullen on the liberal fake news ABC where he said, you know, Martha Raddatz ripping him. Well, wasn't their plan? And basically, you know, going back to the William Tecumseh Sherman quote, war is hell. War is hell. And now you have the brass going there. Obviously, you want to make sure that no one is jumping off the ships. By the way, if you jump off the ship, that's a long way down, right? That's a long way down when you're jumping off the ship. And apparently one person did this, one person didn't. Now, again, the attention is going there. But, you know, these deployments, whether it's security guard Mike, whether it's Jeff Bacon, whomever, it takes a toll. And we could only imagine the challenges that those brave soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen face day in and day out when you're thinking of going in and being deployed and, you know, not getting a beer day, as they call it, not getting a day to relax and go. So they will return to port. And it's fascinating to figure out how our military works, where you have people saying that these massive deployments, and again, you had the president over the weekend doing what he does, saying, well, I don't think it's long enough, that sort of thing. But they talk about, and really, and maybe my analogy isn't correct, but it's like the equivalent of running your car without getting the oil changed, without doing anything else, without the proper maintenance. It wears and wears and wears on your ability to perform, your car's ability. If you don't change the spark plugs sooner or later, it's going to cost you. If you don't allow the troops to sit back and relax and rest, then eventually they're going to wear down. I have a friend of mine who's taking a few days off. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but I have, where you work and you work and you work. And maybe it's a generational thing. Maybe Bo's beloved millennials and the Gen Z people, maybe they have it figured out in addition to their affinity for pumpkin spice latte or whatever, the PSLs, if you will. I thought that was personal seat license, but I digress. Maybe they have it figured out where you don't grind yourself and become a cog. And unless you have the ability to leave and to have the freedom, everybody's a cog. And the cogs get wound down. The cogs get, beat up. And it was fascinating listening to Admiral Mullen, who did not take Martha Raddatz on her opportunity to rip the military, to rip the Navy, to rip everybody else, basically saying, these are sailors. These are people that they volunteered for this. And by the way, if you look at the military, the recruiting goals that were abysmal, that were trickling under Joe Biden, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, they've already exceeded their goals for this year, which is amazing considering we are literally at war. At war. And here we have at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, young men and young women signing up. So despite the bad publicity, despite the reporting, whether or not it is true or not, young people are putting their country, our country, ahead of themselves, which is quite remarkable and quite amazing. And as I said before, there is nothing more humbling than being a 17-year-old, leaving your home, leaving your family, and going into the MEP Center and getting the shots, going into a room. Some people do it in front of a crowd. Others, most of us, have that quiet dignity where we swear an oath to protect the Constitution with our lives. And that is something that continues to this day. And I'm going to try to find that Mullen clip because it was really remarkable, where he broke down how these extended deployments, how you have to manage them. And what we didn't figure out, sadly, what we didn't figure out was the Iranians' ability to destroy our bases, to harm our bases, because we mistakenly thought that we could give the folks liberty there. That isn't possible because of operational security, or as they say, OPSEC in the military. And so, again, here we have, it's a horrible situation. It might not be as bad as people are saying. However, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, the military does deserve the most attention we can give it. Like I said before, I would really want to play that clip for you. But before that, on Fox News Sunday, our man Clay Travis was on there talking about the WNBA. And Reince Priebus, who has left ABC to go to Fox, he was brilliant on ABC, but he talked about the end of woke. And people are going, well, we don't even know what woke is. We all know what woke is, do we not?
Reince.
Well, I mean, there's a whole laundry list for the reasons why woke 1.0 is dead. The biggest is Donald Trump. I mean, he crushed woke 1.0, people aren't interested in changing their pronouns, and woke 1 or 2.0, people aren't interested in changing the American idea and who we are as a country. So look, but the problem the Democrats have is that this is where their energy is. This is where middle finger politics resides. This is the debate in the Democratic Party is very, very real. It is alive and well all over the country. It doesn't matter whether you're in Milwaukee, Madison, Lansing, or Detroit. There is a division. And the problem is that if you are a black voter in Milwaukee, you are fairly conservative, you care about safe streets, you don't care about transgenderism. But if you're a rich, white, educated Democrat in Madison, Wisconsin, Francesca Hong seems like a very logical choice. And this is the reality. So they're going to snatch potentially victory from the defeat from the jaws of victory in 2026, and they are now wrestling with this reality, and that's where they are.
Well, and John-
Yeah, amazing when you're thinking about the insaneness of this. And he knows a lot about Wisconsin. He ran Wisconsin. He ran with Scott Walker, and Scott Walker almost became president. But Reince became head of the RNC, worked with the president as chief of staff. He knows the ins and outs. And yeah, you can't really worry about your pronouns when all of a sudden you're really worried about crime and punishment and gas prices and everything else. So again, the end of woke 1.0, 2.0, that sort of thing. By the way, I'm going to take a break here. I want to find that clip with Admiral Mike Mullen, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I can't seem to find it, so I'll have to manually take a look at it. But it's fascinating, his look at deployments and how Martha Raddatz tried to get him going, and that didn't work. More coming up next. We'd love to get your comments. Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO. And it's not looking good for you or your people, because you didn't back us up, and now Mr. Putin says the UK could be next, bub.
Well, something like that. This is a threat from Russia for the United Kingdom. This is because British-made drones have been used in Ukrainian strikes that have hit deep, deep inside Russian territory, attacking oil refineries, logistics centers, ports and warehouses as part of Ukraine's counteroffensive against the Russian invasion. A post on social media from the Russian embassy in the UK has accused Britain of deliberately escalating the war, saying London's actions will inevitably carry consequences for which it will have to answer.
Well, it seems that Mr. Putin isn't taking any prisoners. What's the reaction from you and your people? What do you say to Putin?
Well, Britain is showing no sign of backing down to Vladimir Putin. Prime Minister Andy Burnham says the UK will support Ukraine 100% against this illegal war led by Vladimir Putin, saying that the UK is providing support so that Ukraine can defend itself. A similar comment from the Defence Ministry here, saying Britain stands shoulder to shoulder with Ukraine. So it doesn't look like the UK is going to allow Russia to veto British foreign policy. Instead, the signal is that Russian threats are not going to change the level of support for Ukraine, which is increasing. In June, the British government announced a package worth about $1 billion, includes a commitment to provide 150,000 drones to Ukraine by the end of this year.
Well, it'd be nice if you guys would help us out.
Well, I think the British government would say, as regards Iran is concerned, the UK is continuing to allow the United States to use British airfields to launch missions, defensive missions in particular, against Iran. But the UK government has not changed its position. It doesn't want to get involved directly in the conflict. It's willing to help with the Strait of Hormuz once the threat has lifted, but it's not a fight that the British government wants to get deeply drawn into.
Man, I'm glad we didn't feel the same way when Churchill needed us.
Well, perhaps. I think that the UK would say is a very, very different scenario. against the aggressive, expansionist Nazi Germany, and what I think European governments see as something of a war of choice from President Trump. With certainly the German Chancellor, former British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that there is no obvious way out of this. It went in without a strategy for victory and without a backup plan.
Well, I know that if I got in trouble, even if it was my own mistake, because you're a real friend, you would help me.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't leave me just stranded there as I tried to re-roof my house. You would be up there on the ladder working as well. And yet, the United Kingdom, Europe, not so much. And then you have the specter, Jonathan Savage, of Putin and Russia, and we've been seeing these drones and missiles mistakenly land in NATO territory. What do you make of that? And what's the reaction throughout the NATO, throughout the NATO universe, if you will?
Well, look, if you decided to go skateboarding down the 84 and you got caught before you even reached Pocatello, and you were unable to get anywhere else, I would be there with my pickup truck to pick you up and take you to safety. Don't you worry about that. Look, this is a situation that I think that the British government are going to say, President Trump started this, President Trump needs to find an end to it. But at the same time, there's no doubt that the UK is feeling the bite of this. They're feeling the consequences of this conflict. And the pressure might come on the British government to try and take a more active role in ending the conflict, maybe not militarily, maybe diplomatically, before the financial effects of this get even worse for Europe, because something that Iran wants to do is make this war as costly as possible for the West, not just for the United States, but for the entire West. And we're seeing some countries step up and try and talk to Iran and build bridges. Austria and Greece have offered to get involved in diplomacy, but not what you'd call a sustained and widespread effort from Europe's part so far.
Yeah, the president talking about the UK prime minister saying that he might open up the North Sea. Is that President Trump, or people say there's a ton of oil there? I guess that's in your neighborhood.
Being from Scotland, you're only well aware of the North Sea oil debate. Plenty of people who want Scotland to be independent want to think that Scotland will be an incredibly wealthy country because of the North Sea oil, the oil that is left. But this is now a test for Andy Burnham for his credentials with people who say that North Sea oil should be left alone because of climate change, or whether Britain's fossil fuel industry has to be protected, and we need a balanced approach to energy at the moment, and just so we don't have such reliance on foreign energy sources. And we know that President Trump would like to see Andy Burnham change Britain's policy, and Andy Burnham has signalled that he is open-minded, certainly more so than his predecessor, and that got the relationship between the new British Prime Minister and President Trump off to a fairly positive start when they had their first discussions.
A final thought for you, sir, and I don't mean to treat you like Solo in the Bloodline. However, this is what happens when you audible. What are we missing with Ukraine? We just hear 1 minute Ukraine's winning, next minute Russia's winning. You're a lot closer to the action. You talk to the people that matter. What's really going on?
I think it's hard to say that anyone is winning specifically. What we're seeing is on the front lines, Ukraine say that they've claimed back hundreds of square miles this year. Russia will announce it has taken this village or that town, but there's been no substantive change in the front lines. The boundaries are pretty much as they have been for quite a while, and a lot of people are dying as a result of this. People are also dying deep inside Ukraine because Russia is sending hundreds of missiles and drones on a regular basis, and Ukraine is hitting back with hundreds of drones being intercepted by Russian air defenses in recent nights. So I think that the way of putting it is a deadly stalemate right now.
Jonathan Savage, anything else you would like to add for the great potato people here?
Is this Solo Sikoa's big moment? Is he going to step up? Is this his chance to finally prove that he's got what it takes? Or is he simply going to fall in line and stay in line?
Got to tell you, I like the new Solo.
I've been skeptical about him, but I'm optimistic for his future right now.
What, are you running for office?
What, me?
Yeah.
No, not as far as I know. I don't think I'll be able to do this
You
job.
just said two different things. You just said two different things, man. Come
I
on,
said
bro.
I was skeptical.
We're not a socialist
He's
here.
changing my mind. I said I was skeptical, but now I'm coming around to him. That's not two different things. That's called progress in and development. That's called changing. That's called when the facts change, your opinion changes.
We're not even going to talk about socialism, are we, this morning?
I hope not. I don't know much about that, to be honest with you.
Well, I heard that you're a socialist. Aren't all you Europeans socialist?
I think that in some people's minds, that having a national health service makes you a socialist. Even though most conservatives in the UK say that they support the national health service, so it is all a matter of perspective, isn't it?
Too tough for me, which is every day. Jonathan Savage, thank you, sir.
All right, take care.
Our great friend Jonathan Savage joining us, Fox News Radio, live from London, right here, Boise to London, on 580 KIDO. We'll talk a little bit about the presidential trade. The president is slapping tariffs and going back and forth and all sorts of things. It's crazy. And this is an obscure story, but I believe Clay and Buck will talk about it. And again, I told you a little bit about this last hour. And this guy, Jim Schwartzel, won this congressional race, and he owns TV stations and radio stations. I almost worked for his dad years ago. But it's funny. Here's the headline. Trump's endorsement loses in Florida. Florida media executive Jim Schwartzel defeated Trump-endorsed Catalina Lauf Tuesday in a Republican primary for the seat vacated by Byron Donalds. By the way, I didn't know that Byron Donalds had that seat. Ooh, one of the most conservative in the country. Fox News notes Trump endorsed Lauf only days before the election, and the loss breaks a pattern of extremely strong endorsement successes for the president in Republican primaries. I gotta say, though, that, I mean, here's this guy running for Congress, and Clay and Buck had him on. I think Sean had him on. He's been on all the shows because he owns the TV stations and the radio stations there. Not saying he's a bad guy, but the power of the media is pretty good. He won by 8 or 9 percentages, but the media doesn't go in depth. They just say that Trump lost. Trump really didn't lose. Byron Donalds probably on his way to the presidency. And it's fascinating. As we have been so blessed to be with you, we've seen a much younger attorney general grow into that role, a much younger congressman, both congressmen. They've all kind of come up together. Congressman Simpson, Congressman Fulcher, Senator Risch, Senator Crapo, Governor Little. We've all gotten used to all of these folks and what they're doing and through the years. But you take a look at the Florida people. And yeah, I did turn down a job to go to Florida recently. My home is with you, whether I'm here or not here. I'm here. I love you. I love my family. I love my faith. And it was a very, very big Florida gig. And Florida, you look at Byron Donalds, maybe he's mid-40s, probably late 30s. The guy worked in V.C. President Trump saw him and said, you're going to be the governor of Florida. But think about the years that have gone by. We've gotten used to seeing these people on the radio, on TV, everywhere. And now they continue to move up the spectrum statewide, federal-wide, and nationwide, which it's just amazing to see, what do they call that, the circle of life. So anyway, Trump didn't lose. The president didn't lose. It's just one of those things, how the media continues to try to poison our minds. And you know, here's the question. If the president endorsed someone in the Idaho Republican primary that you didn't like, would that endorsement change your vote? Well, you could say that a lot of people have issues with the presidential endorsement of certain politicians, but it's not going to change the vote. It's not going to change the vote. Not in Idaho, not anywhere else. By the way, thank you to Window World Boise, windowworldboise.com. They are the window provider of the Kevin Miller program. What does that mean? It means I paid for Window World Boise to put windows in my house. And they're there, and we're saving money. And whether it's patio doors, sliding, we had these French doors, which were kind of clunky. So when they did the windows, they gave us a sliding door. And when someone not named Kevin Miller walked into the screen, they came out and fixed it. I'm not going to say if it was Buster, Maggie, Mrs. Miller, the little alleys, or whomever, but this does happen occasionally, and they're great people to work with. And they're local, not loca, local, which means you can see them right on Chinden. You can go in, look at the beautiful showroom, talk to our friend Yo, talk to the installers, and judge for yourself. Window World Boise, they are Boise's exterior remodeler. Limited time only, 0% interest for 18 months. Call them and say, I heard about it on Kevin Miller. Or the Kevin Miller Show. Grammar is my third language, as you know. Their number, Window World Boise, 208-614-3188, 614-3188. Windows, patio doors, siding, entry doors, they will solve all your problems. Now, earlier, we had a governor saying, let's get rid of data centers. Should we do that in Idaho?
I am removing all data center projects from the fast-track permitting program. I'm using the full weight of my executive authority to put in place immediate protections for the people of Pennsylvania against bad faith developers of AI data centers.
That was Josh Shapiro, an unknown when I worked in Pennsylvania, the possible Democratic presidential nominee in 2028. But what do you think? Is it time to give data centers the boot? Let's talk about it next. Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO.
From the fast-track permitting program, I'm using the full weight of my executive authority to put in place immediate protections for the people of Pennsylvania against bad faith developers of AI data centers.
Well, do we really know if the data center developers are bad? Much more on that in a minute. Good morning, Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO. And with more in-depth on this, our own Tanya J. Powers.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's executive order mandates that data center projects must first be approved by local officials, and they have to pay for their own power. Shapiro's order also says the centers must hire locally, be transparent with local governments, and adhere to high standards of water conservation. He's removing all data center projects from the state's fast-track permitting program and says non-disclosure agreements for the projects will not be allowed. It's a change in stance for Shapiro, a Democrat who is facing re-election this fall, who had encouraged data center development. He says the shift came from conversations he's had with concerned people who live in his state. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
All right, we appreciate that. Tanya J. Powers at 580 KIDO. I think it's pretty wild when you think about data centers and the rise of AI. And is this like this where you work? We're just going to let Perplexity do it. We're going to let Claude do it. We're going to let Chat do it. And then sooner or later, 2001 Space Odyssey is going to seem very antiquated. When did that come out? The 60s, early 70s? When you could talk to the computer. I mean, we already can literally talk to the computer. They'll be having conversations with us, which begs the question, holy Skynet, what's next? Now we're going to try to curb the data centers, which will be interesting to see what that means for the state of Idaho. Well, what do you mean by that, Kevin Miller? Well, in Idaho, we're not curbing the data centers. We're welcoming data centers. We're welcoming everybody. Big business is coming to Idaho. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, and this would be the most massive upset ever economically and from a business perspective, if all of a sudden Micron moved more of their resources to Idaho, away from the world's largest fab, whatever you want to call it, in New York. And the reason why they're having the challenge, the problems, and the reason why they may have already been doing that, and I do believe that we've been getting more resources, or Micron or the state has been getting more resources, is because New York is putting up a fight against the data centers, against their natural resources being used, and they have a very, very strong progressive governor who has decided that we're going to, speak against data centers. Now, like I said, that could be open to debate and dialogue and discussion. But we don't really have that here. We need to mine, and our mining correspondent, the only show in America that we have actually a correspondent to mine, for mining, Dylan, will warn us about how it's all going to heck in a handbasket with the mining. And I'm not saying that he's wrong. And we have a governor, and this is not bagging on the governor. This is the governor's train of thought. Like, he wants the schools to be better. He wants business to be better. And you could take a look at the success of Idaho versus Oregon, California, and Washington, where literally millions, if not billions of dollars are leaving the state. Why? Because of the overregulation, overtaxation, the vilification of private enterprise. And as I said before, it leads us to the point on whether or not we want to continue to be the home of the data centers of everything else. So in New York, if they continue to have problems, and New York puts continued governors or moratoriums or clamps down on Micron's expansion, and by the way, if there's a Democrat that gets in, you talk about really putting a clamp on private industry, there's going to be a big wind of change, a huge wind of change, if you will, that's going to happen. So if they're not doing it now, you've got to build. Now, I know they have a facility, and we bagged on them for years, building this massive headquarters, I believe, in Virginia. But if Boise can handle it, and that's the point, whether or not we can really handle this, because let's face it, we really don't have a lot of massive natural resources and infrastructure, as we're seeing with the water shortages, as we're seeing with the utility rates going up, as we're seeing with a lot of things, if you will. But again, it's something for you to keep your eye on when you're taking a look at possible bigger business expansion in Idaho and throughout the Boise area. So we'll keep an eye on that at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Stories we are taking a look at. There were primaries across the country, and you go, Kevin Miller, what really happened? Well, that's a good point. We have primary results in Florida, which we've gone over ad nauseum. It was strange. Again, I know you're sitting there going, hey, Kevin Miller, we don't live in Florida. This isn't a national show. You may have people in Miami listening and other places that, try to recruit you, but, we're not a Florida show, and we're not auditioning for Florida. But I've never seen a network just focus in on Florida, which was what CNN did last night. But there were other primary results. Let's find out what happened in Wyoming. Maybe some people in Wyoming would listen. Maybe I do believe Sheridan does listen to the podcast. Let's take a listen.
Wyoming Congresswoman Trump-backed Harriet Hageman is going to face Democrat and former state Representative James Byrd for the seat held by Senator Cynthia Lummis, who's retiring. Hageman was first elected to Congress in 2022 after defeating former Representative Liz Cheney.
Yeah, Hageman, she came in to visit the state. I don't know which political group brought her in, but she's very conservative, very Wyoming, very cowgirlish, if you will. She doesn't play. And in Wyoming, they make us look liberal.
Republicans selecting State Senator Eric Barlow in a four-way primary as their nominee for governor in the race to succeed outgoing Governor Mark Gordon. He'll face Democrat Kenneth Kastner in the November general election. President Trump carried the state of Wyoming by nearly 46 percentage points in 2024, his largest margin in any state. Sue Guzman, Fox News.
Oh, if we didn't have Boise, we could have passed them, right? Okay, we've covered Florida. We've covered Wyoming. What about Alaska? Yeah, Alaska still matters.
Republican Senator Dan Sullivan and Democratic former Congresswoman Mary Peltola advanced to November's general election on Tuesday, setting the stage for what's expected to be an expensive race and a fight for a seat that could determine the balance of power in the U.S. Senate. Independent Bill Hill and Republican U.S. Representative Nick Begich have advanced to the general election for Alaska's only U.S. House seat. And Democrats Jonathan Christ Tompkins and Tom Begich are among four people who will advance to the general election for governor in Alaska in a ranked choice general election. Ted Lindner, Fox News.
There we have it. Thank you, Ted. So we're caught up on Wyoming, Florida, and the great state of Alaska. Coming up next, the Attorney General is taking on Meta. We'll give you the inside skinny plus your reaction at 580-5436. That's 580-KIDO.
Effective immediately, I am removing all data center projects from the fast track permitting program. I'm using the full weight of my executive authority to put in place immediate protections for the people of Pennsylvania against bad faith developers of AI data centers.
I'm wondering really what does he mean by bad faith developers? Bad faith developers, is that anybody that wants to build anything? Like I said, much more on that in a minute, but we do want to keep you in mind on what's going on locally. Attorney General Raul Labrador, the crime fighter, has joined more than 24 other states in a federal trial accusing Meta of designing Facebook and Instagram features to encourage compulsive use among children and teenagers while misleading parents about the potential harms. I think the overall loss could be $1.3 trillion, something like that. And by the way, they do this to keep us addicted as adults. Gosh knows what they've done for children. The states allege Meta or Facebook improperly collected information from children under 13. Now, Meta, they're in big trouble. They dispute the allegations because they don't want to pay any money. And obviously, they just want to collect the shares and everything else. But you think about this, Idaho joining this lawsuit, and if they win, what that will do to the beloved Facebook, if you will, what that will do to the shares and everything else. This social media, it runs our lives now, sadly. Go anywhere and everybody's addicted to their phones. Do yourself a favor. Try not to double watch something. And it's amazing. I'm reading an article by John Canzano while watching the reruns of Hogan's Heroes while keeping up with the Florida primary debates. I will go back to Al and Ontario. We were a lot more focused back in the day. He's right about that. Conservatives will say, look, we don't want government micromanaging private companies. And they're right about that. Again, this is like Idaho is the microcosm of the entire universe. Do you need corporate regulations? Well, how about when it comes to kids? Do you create different regulatory values, systems, rules? Or do you just blame the parents and say, well, parents have a responsibility if they're going to have the phone raise their kid, like for some, television raise their kids? We can't do anything about it. Is it the government's job to regulate Meta and everything else? I think when you're a public corporation, you do have a responsibility. You could say, well, if that's the case, then we should have kids smoking. We should have kids working. There should be no regulations. That's what the libertarians want. That's really what the libertarians want to do. Down with government. Everybody run for office, right? Now, taking a look at the First Amendment, people are going to argue about that. But again, our crime-fighting Attorney General, Raul Labrador, is joining this lawsuit. And Meta could be in big trouble. And by the way, since it is a back-to-school day theme here on the Kevin Miller program at 580 KIDO, the question, I know the answer, but I'm not going to give the answer. I'd like the answer from you. Who carries more responsibility for your kids' education, your kids' addictions, your kids' social media habits or addictions? Is it the Facebook or the parents? Now, we can go a little deeper because, well, remember, people wanted to sue Ronald McDonald for childhood obesity. People wanted to sue Joe Camel. In fact, right, isn't that one of the reasons why we didn't have cartoon characters with the, like anybody really believed a camel smoking a cigarette was appealing to young kids? But there are, you can't just throw things out there. There has to be some inherent responsibility. So we're going to see what happens when we roll through this lawsuit. And again, there's a very different sheriff in town with this attorney general, and no disrespect to the predecessor, but he is more actively involved in holding folks accountable, actively involved in protecting life. When we're talking about the liberal loons frivolously suing the state of Idaho. And that's very important. I go back to this when we think about it. You take a look at what we're saying. Idaho says Facebook and Instagram didn't accidentally hook your kids, did they? No. They designed to do that. We know that. So 580-5436, 580-KIDO. We'd love your thoughts on that. Let's go to Ron Grant.
Paid for by Ron Grant, your safer money specialist.
And good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Kevin.
Well, here we are. We're all addicted to one thing. There's not a law against it. It's called money, and it's something we want to hold on to, and that's where you come in.
That's correct. There is no law against it, buddy, but, I meet with a lot of new people each and every week, and most people I meet with are going to outlive their money for three reasons, Kevin. Number one, they didn't start early enough. Number two, they didn't put enough away. But number three is they stayed in risk too long. And what do we know about risk? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, variable annuities, oil, gas, etc. My clients and I sleep at night knowing that we can't lose our principal and we can't lose any gains that we've already earned. But most importantly, Kevin, my clients and I have an income source for the rest of our natural lives. And if we're married, when one spouse passes, the other spouse gets that income for the rest of their life. And when they pass, whatever's left goes to the beneficiaries. And of course, traditional retirement plans like 401ks and IRAs and 457 plans, etc., can't provide that because they're tied to the risk and the fees of the Wall Street casino.
And Ron, how can people get a hold of you to get the information they need?
I've put together great information on my website. You can go on there 24/7, articles to read, videos to take a look at. There's even a book to download, 10 things to know about retirement income. And that address is safermoneyspecialist.com. But, let's have a phone conversation right here in the Treasure Valley about how you can have a guaranteed income that you can't outlive for you and your family. Zero stock market risk. But most importantly, Kevin, legacy protection for you and your family. 208-660-1372.
Ron Grant, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Appreciate you, buddy. Have a good day.
Paid for by Ron Grant, your safer money specialist.
And we appreciate Ron Grant. So again, if you're just tuning in, Idaho joining this trial accusing Meta of addicting children. It's going to be a big suit. And again, you have different sheriffs in town that are holding these corporate giants accountable. As I said before, though, when you're taking a look at the social media addiction, where do you go and how far do you go and who bears the responsibility? I guess we've now come up with a chat GPT for kids. And what's next? Chat for tweens?
A former Meta executive testifying that instances of user encounters with violent or disturbing images on the company's platforms was between 100 to 400 times higher than what Meta reported, saying this caused a false impression of safety, and adding Meta has taken a don't ask, don't tell approach to kids under the age of 13 on the platforms. California, Colorado, Kentucky, and New Jersey are leading a group of 29 states accusing Meta of knowingly and deliberately creating addictive features that harm young people's mental health and of collecting minors' data without parental consent in violation of federal law. Meta says it strongly disagrees with the allegations and is proud of its record protecting teens. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
Big question is, does Zuckerberg make a call and try to strike a deal with the president? We go to Liberal Steve, who joins us now at 580 KIDO. Will he be good or will he be the usual? Find out now. Good morning, Liberal Steve.
Good morning, KM in the morning. I'm always good. And the mega guy, what's his name? Facebook or Facebook, yeah. I call it Facebook because he's a well-known hybrid in our group, our followings. You know, when you used to go for your walks in the morning, Kevin, do you still go for those?
I go for my walks. I don't go in the morning, but yeah, I do go for my walks. The challenge has been the air quality has been so bad.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about how bad the air is up there. The air here is up north. But, you know, I listen to your callers, especially I'm concerned about Concerned and Al. You know, I didn't become so wealthy by becoming just the fall in line guy. Going to live my life out in the Midwest, going to live my life out in the East Coast, going to live my life out in California. I went where things worked for me and made friends with things. But a lot of my friends are dead now. But my point is, Kevin, when I went for a walk, I would contemplate like 100 years from now, would you agree that 100 years from now, most of us listening to your show are going to be dead? Could you agree to that?
Okay.
Someone else, Kevin, 100 years from now is going to be living in yours and your sweet wife's house. Someone else is going to be living there if the house is still standing. And then our beautiful cars that we like so much and everything, they're just going to be scrap metal in 100 years. Everything you worked so hard to build is going to be gone, given away, forgotten. Your name will fade away. Kevin Miller will fade away. Liberal Steve will fade away. Tea Party Bob will fade away in just a couple generations. And, you know, your name will fade away with just a couple generations, and you know that, and I know that. Think about that. Do you even know your great-grandparents' full names, Kevin?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's why I have no fear of death. But do you even know your grandparents' full names? Or your great-grandparents?
Yes. I know my great... Yeah, I do.
Yeah, but once you get past that, it's pretty much gone, right? There's stories...
Where are you going with this?
Well,
Where are you going with this?
I'm going, I'll make a point here, like Lars Larson, I'll get to the point. You know, the worries that fill your mind every day, Kevin Miller, are completely pointless. Every worry. I mean, every single worry. Your heart, your weight, everything else, they're pointless. We live on a rock that's spinning at over 1,000 miles per hour in a universe with over 400 billion trillion stars. Good God, that's a 4 with 23 zeros after it. You know what I mean? And you're going to be dead soon. I'll be dead soon. And Tea Party Bob will be dead soon. A lot of the callers...
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Where are we going with this?
If the data center is what I'm getting at. If you can think about that for a moment, every day, that awareness that none of this actually matters, you can control yourself and set yourself free and do what Kevin Miller truly loves and lives for. The data centers, Kevin, right now, as we speak, are obsolete. China, for the last 6 years, and now in 2026, in July of this year, They've developed over at their Cortical labs human brain cells to replace standard silicon chips. And they grow these in the labs. They're growing them right now as you and I speak in the labs. And they can run massive energy demands that these data centers are using tons of electricity and water for. That's happening right now. And happening right now, there's a contact. If you go this summer of 2027 to Las Vegas, you can see a contact that you can put in your eye and make all your phone calls and do everything you do with your phone right now using just your eye. So that's how fast things are going to change. So everything you're worrying about in the data centers and everything, that'll take care of itself. I mean, it's just the old.
Right. You're right. We shouldn't worry about Facebook corrupting children. We shouldn't be worried about anything else. We shouldn't be worried about all those things. We should just just smoke some weed, hang out in the hot tub, and don't worry about society. Let's just be selfish. Mm-hmm. Thank you for the call. And again, should we go to the golden showers in Russia? Should we all, should we have all these fantasy things? If they had something on President Trump, wouldn't we know that by now? But liberal Steve says don't worry about it, and then he comes up with this insane thing. Thank you for the call. Kevin Miller, 580-KIDO. What are people thinking? And I love the reaction to Liberal Steve. Liberal Steve continues to go on and on and on. Tea Party Bob goes, I don't know why you let that idiot on the air. Well, because it's America. And unlike the libs, unlike the loons, we don't ban people from coming on and speaking their mind. And it's funny, and maybe that's not the descriptive word I want to use, but 2 months ago, our man Chandler said, watch out for this guy, John Ossoff, because he had been in Georgia. And Ossoff is a Democrat who got in under controversial issues in 2020. He has worked hard. He has done a lot of work. Now he is the odds-on favorite to repeat in Georgia, a Democrat in Georgia. And that is one of the great tragedies of the 2020 election is how the Republicans lost Georgia. And President Trump declared war on the Georgia Republicans and all sorts of stuff, which at the very least was very, very unfortunate for the state of Georgia. And the chances of unseating Ossoff have basically gone out the window. So Ossoff is taking shots now at Donald Trump, making these assumptions about Natalie, whatever her name is, and it's a cheap shot. And the president calls him Pee Wee Herman. The White House fired back at Ossoff. And you think to yourself, where are the adults here? We can't do that in our private lives. Why will this guy who wants to be president attack the current president? I mean, calling him a draft dodger, calling him all this. Well, Ossoff, what have you done? Did you at Beacon Plumbing, beaconplumbing.com. Stop freaking, call Beacon today. Congressman Mike Simpson joins us now. Congressman, always a pleasure to have you on, sir. Good morning.
Yeah, good to be with you, Kevin.
We're going to throw it to you first because we try to do our best to throw you off, which is impossible. So what issue would you like to talk about, sir?
Anything that you'd like to talk about, what's going on in Washington, how we're trying to get our appropriation bills, make sure we don't have a government shutdown in October. But the House and the Senate have been in Congress have been in session at different times. And so we've passed a continuing resolution to make sure the government stays open, because the last thing you want is a government shutdown at any time, but particularly before election. So we passed one. The Senate passed one that's different than ours. So now we've got to get back and conference those and make sure that we don't have a government shutdown. But, there's a lot of good things that have been going on that we've got to get done. I think we don't have long to do them before the election. We're only in for like 4 weeks before we're out for the election time. But there's a lot of important legislation. I still think we've got to pass the legislation protecting women in in Girls Sports Act and the Born Again Survivors Act, the Kids Act, the Labor, Health, and Human Services Appropriation Act. There's still a lot of things to do that need to get done, and that doesn't even include some of the major things that I think are important, like the SAVE Act. Somehow we've got to get the SAVE Act done. If we don't have the American public that believes our elections are honest and secure, then you don't have any confidence in the government at all. To me, that's the most important thing, is making sure that American people believe the elections are secure.
Our great friend Congressman Simpson joining us. Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO. Always on message. So let's continue on with this, sir. A lot of people aren't talking about it, except the politicos in Washington, the idea of another government shutdown. You've got your opponents on the other side, the loons, the libs, basically probably salivating at the possibility of a government shutdown, not because it aids the country, it hurts the country, but will help them in the midterms.
Yeah, that was, I was thinking several months ago that Schumer and Jeffries really wanted a government shutdown in October, because the last one, that was the Schumer shutdown. I can remember Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House, would stand up at a press conference and say, "This can't be our fault. How can it be our fault? The Republicans control the House, control the Senate, and the White House. So how could it be our fault?" Well, then he didn't go on to say, but you have to have Democratic support in the Senate to get anything done. You have to have 60 votes. So, and that's where it all got held up. And I thought that they would want a government shutdown because they think that would be good for them in the election. I think they've kind of changed their mind. I think they realized that a government shutdown is never good policy and never good politics, even though they'd use it if they could. But so I think we can get a continuing resolution to fund the government till early December to make sure that there's not a government shutdown in October. That, I think, would be devastating for politics in general, politicians in general. So I think we're going to be okay in that respect. We'll get one done when we get back, but I'm hopeful that there won't be a government shutdown.
Congressman Mike Simpson joining us here at 580 KIDO. Obviously, Congressman Simpson, you're a guy that gets things done behind the scenes mostly. That's why we appreciate you joining us here. What do you make of the latest deficit, the $40 trillion? Obviously, something needs to be done. You're working on it. You're at the ground level. Is there any movement to try to solve this problem?
I think there's more and more movement on it, but some people think you just need to quit spending money. That doesn't solve the problem. What you've got is entitlement programs, and if you don't reform those entitlement programs, which are about 75% of our total spending, you got to reform those programs. Not to take Social Security away from anybody that's getting it or anybody that's getting ready to retire in the next 10 years. But you got to change it for the future. And that's something that I think more and more people are starting to work on. There's a lot of ideas out there, but we haven't got serious about it yet. I'm hopeful that we will, because Social Security itself is going to go bankrupt pretty soon if we, within like 5 or 6 years, 7 years, if we don't do something about it. So that's the main focus. You could actually eliminate everything that we do in the Appropriations Committee, which is what you typically think of as government, whether it's the Defense Department, whether it's the Interior Department, the Justice Department, or anything, You could eliminate all those things. You'd still have a budget deficit. That's how bad the numbers are with the entitlement programs. But we've got to make some changes, and it's going to take some tough votes. But it's something I've been talking about for the last 15 years because we've seen this coming for a long time. But it's always easier to put it off to the next Congress and let them deal with it, Well, it's come time where we've got to deal with it.
And speaking of dealing with problems, I'm going to try to get both in here. Obviously, you're getting a lot of attention for your social media. We kidded about that the last time. We wrote about it. Michael Deeds wrote about it. You're getting a lot of buzz, but how do you mold being a serious lawmaker like you are with getting the amount of followers that you're getting? Does that really help expand the message and reach audiences that you wouldn't reach otherwise?
Yeah, it does. Younger generation watches these a lot, but you'd be amazed how many older people have come up to talk to me about an issue or something like that, and they'll say, "Oh, by the way, I love your social media and stuff." I get stopped in airports and everybody, you're the guy that's doing all the social media stuff. And it is, but I think what's important is most of the time you see politicians on TV doing interviews and stuff, and it's all pretty serious and stuff. But we're just normal people. And this, I think, is trying to bring out the normal side of us and trying to show that, hey, we're your next door neighbor that you elected to Congress, and stuff, and we're still normal.
Yeah. You have to have a lot of confidence in yourself when you do this, and you should be commended for that. I know a lot of people, when you put yourself out there, obviously you get the shots. So, again, I've held off on this one, but I can't any longer. INL, the nuclear agreement, everything else. This is all things Mike Simpson right here. So how would you like to address the idea of more nuclear material coming to Idaho, sir?
Well, what the administration is doing is put out and ask for states to put in proposals to become the Nuclear Innovation Center and stuff. And that means nuclear from the very beginning to the very end of the cycle. And the place that's probably most prepared to do something like that is Idaho. But it takes the people of Idaho to support it. It takes the INL, obviously, as the lead nuclear lab in the country. I think they've got. There were five locations that the DOE selected. Idaho was one of those five. So is the state of Utah. I will tell you, the state of Utah is actively going after this. They're like all in, and so the other three places. But Idaho needs to be a part of that because we are the lead nuclear lab in the country. And I will tell you, if you go out to the Idaho National Lab today, what's happening out there is stunning. With the advanced design reactors, the small modular reactors, the micro reactors. I mean, they've had 4 reactors go critical. First time in like 50 years we've had a criticality out there, which is a good thing. I mean, you've taken it to a certain level. So I think the growth at the INL is going to be phenomenal over the next few years. But that doesn't mean we're going to be a dumping ground for waste, as some people have tried to say in some letters to the editor and stuff. That's not the point of this, and that's not what this is intended to do. But the other thing you got to remember, we have all the Navy nuclear storage or Navy nuclear fuel from the beginning of the Navy nuclear program stored at the INL. It was supposed to go to a permanent repository called Yucca Mountain that we built and never could get open. So that's something we still need to keep working on as a permanent repository. And we'll keep doing this. This is temporary stuff that they're working on now, but moving us forward. Because if you're going to have an economy that's growing, you've got to have energy. And the only thing that can produce the amount of energy that's going to be necessary for our economy in the future is nuclear energy.
Well, and again, Congressman Simpson joining us here at 580 KIDO. Obviously, that is such a touchy subject when you go back to the history of Idaho and the federal government and nuclear material.
Yeah, it is. It's a very touchy subject. And but, Idaho and the federal government, since they came up with the BAT agreement, and really you have to give Cecil Anders some credit here. He was the one that really brought the DOE kind of into the negotiation and said, listen, guys, you guys got to sit down and we've got to decide what we're going to do with cleaning up the site and stuff. So he was instrumental in this. Then BAT became governor, and they created the governor's agreement. And that was some tough going for a while. I know when I first went back to Washington, D.C., within DOE, the department back there, you would have people when they would be looking at a program or where they wanted to spend some resources, I would hear in the background some of these people saying, well, you just can't deal with Idaho, because we were pretty tough. We were the first state to get a governor's agreement and stuff, or a state agreement with the DOE. Now almost all states have one. But I think they've come to realize Idaho knows what they're talking about. Yes, we want to protect our environment, and we will protect our environment, but we can do the things that we've been doing for 75 years after the site. It is an amazing place to go. If you want to get wowed sometime, just go visit the site.
And Congressman Simpson, for those of us that weren't here or weren't alive when you had Governor Batt and Governor Andrus all working together on this. Again, and this is a huge compliment. You know them. You've worked with them. You were around then, working in state politics and working for Idaho. Can you give us some perspective on their legacy? And again, you're our gateway to their contributions, sir.
Well, it was, this all started it started when they brought the nuclear navy to the INL years and years ago in the 1950s. But when Governor Andrus was governor the first time, before he became Secretary of Interior, he was the governor, and it was the Atomic Energy Commission that ran the site. And he called Dixie Lee Ray, that was the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, and said, "Hey, when are you going to clean up this site? We got all this buried waste, et cetera, et cetera." And she told him, "Don't worry, we've got a plan to do it." And then he left and became Secretary of Interior for 4 years. Came back 2 years after that, he became governor, and nothing had been done. And he called her again and said, "What's your plan?" And they didn't really have a plan on what they were going to do. And they've cleaned up some sites, but they cleaned up the site in Denver, Colorado. And I talked to my Colorado colleagues, and they say, "Yeah, we cleaned up that site out on Rocky Flats." And I said, "You didn't clean it up. What you did is package it up and send it to Idaho." And that's what they did. And now we've characterized it all. We've sent it all down to the website. And that was because of the pressure that Andrus and then Batt, after he became governor, put on the DOE and kept putting on the DOE. And that there were certain consequences. There was deadlines. They had to have certain things done by certain years and stuff. And they've pretty much met the deadlines. Some of them they haven't, but for a reason, if they can explain it and stuff. Not that they're not working on it and stuff. We just wanted them to keep cleaning it up. And actually, the site and the waste that they had out there, the true material, true waste, and that kind of stuff, has been cleaned up tremendously. And I mean, it's amazing what they've done, both on the cleanup side and on the research side. We have two contracts, one on the cleanup side, one on the that does the research and the laboratory part of it.
Congressman Simpson, do we have you for one more segment? Hate to put you on the spot, but again, I don't want to abuse my time.
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you, sir. More coming up with Congressman Mike Simpson next. Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO. For those of us that haven't been, that should be, can you tell us about the Potato Museum in Blackfoot?
Hey, the Potato Museum was an old railroad station there, and it's a beautiful old building. And when Union Pacific was trying to get rid of some of these buildings, some of these old railroad stations, the upkeep on them and stuff, this one was built with lava rock and stuff. Beautiful old building along the rails in Blackfoot, and they sold it to the city of Blackfoot for $1. And the city took over, and the Chamber of Commerce now works out of there, and it also became the Potato Museum. You can get all things potatoes, and we have free taters for out-of-staters. So it's a great place to stop by.
No, it's again, that's unique to Idaho. So warm, so welcoming. Congressman Simpson, obviously you're very concerned about what's going on in the Middle East. We haven't had you on in a while, and I don't think we talked about the war with Iran the last time. Your thoughts?
It is concerning. Obviously, we need to make sure that we get out of this what we went into, and that is that our goal at first was no, Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And I will tell you, this is not just Trump saying this. Every president since, I think, Ronald Reagan has declared that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, both Republican and Democrat. Iran was getting close to having one. They were enriching uranium up to 60%. There's no reason you need to go above 20% for nuclear power. It's like 14 or 15% that you enrich to make nuclear power. When you get up to 60%, the only reason that you need that is to make a weapon. And so they were not that far away from doing it, from creating a nuclear weapon. And how would you like to deal with that country after they had a nuclear weapon? It would really be dangerous then. So Trump decided we've got to stop him, and that's what what he went into. And then other things have come up during this, the Straits of Hormuz and that type of thing. But I think the administration has to keep the pressure on, has to keep the economic pressure on, and has to make sure that Iran understands that they're not going to have a nuclear weapon. And, you know, most of the Middle Eastern countries, whether it's Kuwait or the UAE or Jordan or the others, are kind of, and the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, most of those are on our side on this. They don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon either. They know that that would be devastating to them, because then they would kind of do what they're trying to do, and that's reestablish the old Persian Empire. So I think certainly nobody likes the war. I don't like dropping bombs, and I don't like the conflict, but I think we've got to finish this for sure.
Well, how do you respond to many of the Democrats saying that this was, quote, Trump's war of choice, sir?
Well, you know, war of choice. Kind of define to me what a war of choice is. Yes, he could have said, okay, we're not going to do this, and we're just going to let it go on. We're going to let Iran get closer and closer to a nuclear weapon. And then what do you do once they've got a nuclear weapon? We found out what you do with North Korea. Now North Korea has hundreds of nuclear weapons, and they're a danger to the world. We wanted to stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power and having nuclear weapons. When they tell you that they just wanted nuclear power to be able to produce power for their people, we offered to give them the fuel for a nuclear reactor to produce power, and they rejected it. Said no, we couldn't do that. We were going to give them the fuel and then take the fuel back so that it couldn't go into enrichment and stuff. So they're kind of duplicitous in this. And the problem with Iran is they never keep the word on anything they sign. That is a long-term problem. And so the president's trying to make sure that this is a solid deal that we end up with, and that Iran realizes that they're not going to be the bullies in the Middle East.
No, and again, though, you have, not to bag on the young people, but you have a lot of prevalent thought amongst young people, young socialists, young Democrats, that ignorantly, in my opinion, say that, oh, the Iranians were fine. You have our old friend Tucker Carlson saying, oh, there wasn't a nuclear threat. And obviously, you go back to what happened in the 70s, what happened throughout the last 47, 48 years, sir, and they are a threat.
Yeah. Absolutely, they're a threat. I think they're the biggest threat in the world. I think Iran, with a nuclear weapon, is a much bigger threat than China or Russia or North Korea, and they had to be stopped. I understand Tucker Carlson doesn't like any of this stuff, and that's okay. He can do whatever he wants to do, but they were a nuclear threat, and that's why the other countries in the Middle East realized it. I have no doubt in my mind that if Iran had a nuclear weapon, that they would use one. And they would wipe all, I mean, this is religion for them. They would wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And we just can't let that happen. But, you know, it's interesting when you talk about all these young socialists that are getting elected or getting nominated on the Democratic side and what their goal is. You know, I asked myself, okay, if these guys had to leave America, would they go to North Korea or South Korea? I mean, they hate capitalism and say how bad capitalism is. And you know that capitalism has created the greatest economy in the world and the greatest nation in the world. Are there things in capitalism that need to be regulated? Sure there are. And we try to do that. But would they go to North Korea to live or South Korea? Or if it was after World War II, would they go to East Berlin or West Berlin? That's the difference between capitalism and socialism. And these guys are promoting this kind of stuff, and it just drives me crazy. The other thing that's kind of driving me crazy is when I hear all these Democrats talking about the one big beautiful bill is it was just tax cuts for billionaires and all that kind of stuff. Do you know that 70% of the tax cut recipients make under $100,000 a year? 70% of them, averaging $1,815 a year. The no taxes on tips, the no taxes on overtime, the senior deduction, the enhanced child tax credits, those were for normal people, normal working people. They weren't for the billionaire class or anything like that. And I think the best part of the Trump tax cuts, I'll tell you what they were, in my opinion, was Trump accounts. That is where you could put $1,000 The government will match up to $1,000 you put in for a new child that's born, and you can keep doing that over the years. And by the time that child, if you do that, by the time that child gets to be in college, they'll have like 300. I can't remember the exact number. It's like $380,000 in account. We're going to build. We're going to teach capitalism to young people being born. They'll learn the power of compound interest and savings and that kind of stuff. I think it's exciting what's happening with that and what we're seeing the results of that. But it gets misrepresented by a lot of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, as you can imagine.
Yeah, it does. And again, you have the media that only gets one side of the story. Congressman Mike Simpson with us. The final question here at 580 KIDO, and I don't even have to serve it up. Immigration.
Immigration is, I think the worst thing that the Biden administration did is he just opened the border and let, the estimate is 10 to 20 million people come into this country that we don't know who they are. They're undocumented. We don't even know a lot of the people that came in that were the gotaways and stuff, and how many there were there and what their intentions were. That was the worst thing that the Biden administration did. And I think that Trump is getting criticized because ICE is trying to deal with the problem left to him by the Biden administration. And yeah, they're having some tough times with ICE, and you hate seeing anybody get shot or anything like that. But we've got to get these people out of the country. Look at the one that just died there, the lady that just got stabbed in Virginia, in close to where I live when I'm out in Washington. That got stabbed by an illegal from El Salvador. And people will say, some of my opponents will say, oh, that's just such a small percentage of all the illegals that came in that are doing this. You know what? That's one too many. That person will still be alive if this guy had not been allowed and released into this country. That woman would be. And so we need to, I think Trump's doing the right thing. It's not pretty, but it's something that's got to get done, because if you're not a country that can defend your borders, then you don't have a country, frankly.
And how do we balance that with the workforce? Obviously, you've been at the forefront of trying to find a solution for years, sir.
There are a lot of people working in this country that have been here for 20 years or so, and they're good people, and yeah, they came illegally. And so how do we deal that? It almost seems contradictory. If you were to deport everybody that's here and came here illegally, I don't know how much you're willing to pay for a gallon of milk or some apples or whatever. I mean, we need these people in our workforce. So what we've done, and we introduced a bill a couple of weeks ago, is to expand the H-2A program. That's where you can apply for foreign workers. But first you have to try to sell those jobs to Americans. And if Americans won't take them, then you can get a foreigner to come in under an H-2A visa program and work. Unfortunately, in the past, that has only been for seasonal work. The bill we introduced would make it for year-round work, so that, there's no milking season. That's year-round. So H-2A hasn't helped the dairy industry. The expanded use of it for year-round work would help dairy industry, the cattle industry, sheep, that kind of thing. That's a year-round job. So it's a really good step in the right direction, and I think it's the right thing to do. People that are here illegally, you need to bring them out from under the woodwork and do a background check, make sure they're not don't have a criminal background, and pay a fine for coming illegally. So those are some things that we need to still work on. But we just introduced this bill for expanded H-2A program because it's necessary. Some people will say that if American farmers, example, would pay these people a decent wage, Americans would take those jobs. These are pretty good paying jobs. And when I say Americans won't take the jobs, and other people will criticize me for that, saying that, but you know what? A couple of years ago, there were 4,000 openings in the dairy industry across the country, and to get visas, they had to try to get American workers for these jobs. And you know how many Americans took those 4,000 jobs? 4.
How many?
Out of 4,000. So these are not jobs that Americans want. And actually, they're pretty good paying jobs, but they're hard work, damn it. And we need to make sure that these guys we recognize the work they do because we need them. And this does not provide amnesty for anybody. That's another criticism that will come along, but it's not amnesty by any stretch of the imagination.
Congressman Simpson, really appreciate you coming in and talking over the phone. Apologize for not being in studio, but that was my choice, not yours, sir. Thank you very much for joining us.
You bet, Kevin. It's always good to talk to you.
Our great friend Congressman Simpson, Kevin Mill in the morning, 580 KIDO. We'll get your reaction next. Let's get you to work safely and on time. This portion of the program is sponsored by our friends at Beacon Plumbing. Stop freaking, call Beacon today, beaconplumbing.com. You simply can go to our website or apply to be a member of the Appy App Club. We're very discerning on that. You apply, you're accepted. We will actually send you that podcast of the show. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO, and you can listen to Congressman Simpson. By the way, I forgot about that. We had a little issue with the podcast. We'll try to send that out today. Hopefully, we can get that taken care of. By the way, it's interesting when we think about this. We're talking about the Trump administration quite a bit, but what else is going on with prominent Republicans? Who is the most prominent Republican outside the Trump orbit?
35. Would love to know your thoughts at this point on Corey Mills and if you'll be endorsing Ryan Elijah.
Oh, well, I said last week I am not supporting Corey Mills.
All right, there we have it. We apologize for that one. Apparently, the Governor DeSantis' microphone does not want to work. And it shows you the differences between Republicans and Democrats. Here you have Corey Mills, who's under investigation by the House for unethical behavior. And then he ran again, was primaried out. And what Governor DeSantis was trying to say was that if Corey Mills had been renominated, Florida, ruby red Florida, could have lost a seat. Now, remember, Florida, and if we could have redistricted, we would have, but we can't because we don't have enough population. However, the crazy thing about this is that they're going to get 4 additional seats, 4 additional Republican seats that we hope. And one of them had a guy that was very challenged when it came to ethics. And unlike the libs with Plattner and Schmatner and Battner, the Republicans take care of their own. They primaried him out. Speaking of taking care of their own, here is gallivanting Gavin. You remember the last time he was in Boise, he went to the used bookstore and said to Idaho Democrats, "I believe in you."
Would you be a good president?
We'll see. I don't know.
But what do you think you would?
That's a difficult question to answer. I mean, it's so I have no idea. I would like to think I would be, but that's for others to determine. By the way, I think I was a pretty good mayor. I think I was pretty good, but people have different opinions, so I'm not naive about it.
So here we have, let's say you're opening a can of carbonated water, and you're at your home, maybe in Orange County, Schmorange County, wherever, and you hear this interview, and this is a guy that has caused more people to leave California than anyone else. And, you know, just the faux, what do we call this? The faux modesty. You know what I mean? Would you be a good president? I don't know.
Would you be a good president?
We'll see. I don't know.
But what do you think you would?
That's a difficult question to answer. I mean, it's so I have no idea. I would like to think I would be, but that's for others to determine. By the way, I think I was a pretty good mayor. I think I was pretty good, but people have different opinions, so I'm not naive about it.
580-5436, 580-KIDO, and somewhere some Democrat is saying, oh my goodness gracious, isn't he charming? Earlier today, and we'll play the racial game for a moment because the libs always do that with us, but I don't want to ask the question. I mean, this is a program where you give your opinion, and I think the Democrats have a white guy problem. Remember, this is a party that talks about race and ethnicity and DEI and reparations and socialism and everything else. And now that you have 3 candidates that are men that identify as men, that are family men, that aren't married to men, that are, in fact, most likely running for the White House. Gallivanting Gavin, he's out this year. A lot of people from California now living in Idaho saying thank you. Gavin's out. Kamala is not in. So you have Gavin Newsom, West Coast. Yo, what do they call that? East Coast, West Coast. So he's representing the West Coast. You go to the newcomer, the new man on the scene, Ossoff. Yo, Ossoff. John Ossoff, who has made, and it's surprising to me, and I give it to Chandler, who called into this program at 580-KIDO and said, Kevin Miller, watch out for this guy Ossoff. I've been in Georgia. He's rolling. He actually has Republican mayors endorsing him. And Ossoff, what, is an educated white liberal that's an elitist. So Ossoff, but you listen to him talk. He does have a weird syntax, though. Very diabolical, but charismatic. So he starts calling Donald Trump names. Now, I think today, and look, we're a talk show. We're not Robert's Rules of Order. When you start calling people names, like not funny names, I think loon is a funny name, or lib is a funny name. But when you start going personal on people, you lose something. And Ossoff went personal with Natalie Harp, with the president, and all sorts of things. That plays for the base. It doesn't play for the middle. The president has the same challenges, but he's the president, the grand disruptor, the grand outlier. Then we have Josh Shapiro. We could call him, I guess we would call Ossoff the SEC candidate, the Southern guy. And then we have another white guy, Josh Shapiro, who could have, would have, should have been the vice president, except he was smarter than the president. So, or not the president, the presidential nominee, right? So, at 580-5436-580-KIDO, here you have Shapiro in Pennsylvania, the bellwether state, the purple state, the this, that, the other, a northeastern liberal. Has a family, actually was what? Had to leave the governor's office because an arsonist burned it down? Compelling story. Never mind Buttigieg, never mind AOC. But again, if you're the Democrats, don't you want someone different? Perhaps the guy in Maryland. Maybe you want to go back to the black community, the African-American community. A very well-spoken veteran who does an incredible job. You could talk about him. AOC, when we're looking at other people as well. The Democrats do have a problem, and we're going to see how that plays out. But again, I go back to these candidates, whether you're talking about, and look, let's throw out race. Let's say Wes Moore. You have Democrats now have a straight guy problem. Decorated veteran, incredibly does well on camera, even better than the Democratic standard bearer, Barack Obama. Not as aloof, very relatable, but he's in the Northeast. I'm trying to think. Buttigieg, he's not straight, and he's married to a guy, and are people ready for that? I don't know. But if you look at the accomplishments, and this is, I guess you could say, opposition research, or when you were in the military, Op 4. When you're doing the research, you look at Shapiro, Pennsylvania, one of the, 10 most populous states, California with Newsom, West Coast, East Coast, and then the Southern guy with Ossoff. So the Democrats will be interesting to see if they try to go normal or not. Speaking of normal, no one likes it when you have a plumbing problem. No one, sometimes you ever do the woe is me? Woe is me. I'm a martyr. I'm this, I'm that. Echoes of my childhood. However, when you have an issue like the toilet doesn't work, or the garbage disposal doesn't work, or the air conditioner is in trouble, call our friends at Beacon Plumbing. And yes, Kevin Miller, and more importantly, Mrs. Miller, call Beacon Plumbing. Their number, 904-9642. That's 904-9642. Truly, stop freaking, call Beacon. And we're not just talking about Beacon Plumbing, but Beacon Electrical, Beacon Septic, Beacon HVAC, gas. They handle it all. And like I said before, it's amazing now. We've got this new water filtration system, and the water is clean and everything is clean, and they showed us how to do it. Even me, I can figure it out, helping us with our, I was going to say electrical system, but our air conditioner. Truly great service. You have a lot of choices. My personal choice, my professional choice for me, my family, my friends, is Beacon Plumbing. 904-9642, 904-9642. We go to Ben, who joins us now once again from Idaho City. Ben, good morning. You're on 580 KIDO.
Good morning, Kevin. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Hey, just wanted to respond to Senator Risch, but also concerned. I apologize if you felt like you need to redeem yourself. You're a person of high integrity, and it was more of just a discussion on that overgeneralization than on you. I really appreciate your comments back. But on Senator Risch, he had a lot of great comments today, but the last one with the illegals working on the dairies and the apple orchards, I feel like we need to ask ourselves, do we believe in the ability to balance out our economy with supply and demand? Growing up, my family had a potato farm, and so I spent a lot of time roguing potatoes, chasing the cows around, getting the corn watered. And one of my first ventures was changing sprinkler pipes, and I think that's something lost with our youth. My son, he's had a job working at a local Subway. Is that really the best we can come up with for our kids? Because I feel like there's a lot to be learned in those agricultural jobs, the longer hours, just the facing yourself. And I love the people from Mexico, but I want them to do that in Mexico. I want our kids, our youth, our entrepreneurs to go and work on, learn the agricultural stuff. And with apples, if they become expensive, people can start growing apple trees in their backyard. That's not a problem. If milk becomes expensive, it's not a life-saving food. I think we learned from our dealings with China that just because we want cheap things, we don't necessarily like the results of having that trade-off in the end. So I disagree wholeheartedly with his argument that the illegals are here to save us from high prices in the agricultural committee or agricultural area. I think farmers, ranchers, I think that they can rise to the occasion. And I truly believe that capitalism can find a balance out for that. So just wanted to mention that disagreement with Senator Risch.
Well, that was Congressman Simpson, but Ben, look,
I'm sorry.
We're all
sorry about that.
It's okay. We appreciate that, but what I appreciate is, Congressman Simpson, whether you agree with him or not, always takes the time to come in, and it's great to have him back in the rotation. And it is a challenge. On one hand, you have, and I can tell you this, and I won't name the company, but there's a major company that was insanely profitable, and they were dependent on the legal Hispanic community. Now that money has dried up because of the president and the illegals all being shipped home and ICE and everything else. And I'm going, well, what does that say abstractly or concretely that we have a legitimate, profitable money printing business that their entire entity is on the ropes because we're actually enforcing our laws? Ben?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I feel like Congressman Simpson, apologize, I got his name wrong there, mixed up. Out of the 4 or 5 different points you brought up, he's got such great power and ability to speak for Idaho at the national level. But I don't think that this is a fight that we need to keep fighting. I think it's going to be painful. It's going to take some change in thought. It's going to take a little bit of effort. But I feel like Idaho can rise to this occasion. We have a lot of other opportunities to bring in income into Idaho, and I feel like we have an upcoming youth. We keep talking about how they're challenged by social ideas and stuff, and I feel like if you don't give them hard things when they're young, they're not going to be able to accept hard adult decisions when they get older. So, yeah, I feel like that would be something I would hope he would revisit.
Ben, thank you for the call.
Thank you.
More coming up next. Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO. KIDO Talk Radio app, and of course, the Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic coming up. But I'm sitting here looking at a couple of things, and I hope this is fake, but if it isn't, this is pretty bad, where apparently, I'm not going to mention the place, but if you've seen the whole thing, you have a lady filming being thrown out of a coffee shop because she's pro-life. And the guy there that owns the coffee shop, he was saying that he worked hard to get abortion on the ballot. I'm paraphrasing, and you're not welcome, and compare the pro-lifers to the KKK. Maybe you've seen that. It doesn't look AI generated, but we always want to be responsible when we're on the federal airwaves. We always want to be responsible citizens, and we would never want to harm anyone or anyone's business. And in reality, you take a look at things, I suppose a business has a right to give you the boot, but it shows you how the issue of life will continue to bubble up and culminate in the November election. 580 KIDO, restore and give you proactive preventative maintenance on your body. Speaking of which, we'll call him our body man. Jeff Bacon joins us now to talk about a lot of things. Jeff, thank you for your service to our nation as a veteran, and your continued service to the state of Idaho with the Wyakin Foundation and all that you do. So thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Kevin. It's always a pleasure to talk with you.
Well, here we are. A lot going on in your old neighborhood, the Strait of Hormuz, the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, this, that, and the other, bro. I love just kind of this highfalutin thing. Just have at it, sir. Your thoughts?
Highfalutin. Well, I probably start with the Lincoln. I've talked with a few of my contacts in the Navy about the Lincoln. A lot of stories about conditions on board, a lot of photos. You talked about AI stuff just a few minutes ago. Some of those photos you see on the internet are AI generated, or they're from other ships or ships that are in the yards or whatever. So I've asked around, what's the ground truth here, and I even saw an article from Admiral Mullen, who, if you remember, Admiral Mullen was the only standing chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to ever visit Idaho. He came here in 2011 to support Wyakin, actually. And I really respect the guy. He wrote a foreword for one of my cartoon books, too. And he talked about it, and he said that the truth is somewhere in between. Deployments are hard. The Lincoln has been out there for 250 days without a port call, which is rare. Just for some context, during the Vietnam War, the Midway was underway for 332 days. The Gerald Ford, if you recall, just recently had been on deployment for 309 days. The Lincoln's been out for 250 days, but the difference is those other two ships had port calls. The last port call that the Lincoln had was in December of last year in Guam, and is a 2-day port call. So, we talked last time about boredom, about the routine, about the fatigue that sort of sets in where you're always on high alert, you're always doing combat operations, and I think that's probably what we're seeing. The difference between when you and I served and today's military is that they have instant communication. So sailors are texting home. They're in many cases they have video conferences with people back home, and so you have a bad day. A sailor has a bad day, and they're grousing about something. That's going to go home immediately. And if you're a parent or you're a spouse, you're worried about your counterpart, and so you start to talk about it, and those things become blown up in many cases. Sometimes they're true. Sometimes, in many cases, they get overinflated. So my opinion, I think, matches Admiral Mullen, which is that because the deployment has been so long and there has been fatigue, there has been boredom that set in, the sailors are going to have some grousing. But when you start hearing about things like shortage of food, about toilets overflowing, that sort of thing, I don't buy it. I know there's a disruption for a few days in the logistics train because of the combat operations, and some of the ports that they were using were not available. But logistics is a highlight of our military, and they have solved that problem. So it's a tough. Deployments are hard, and sailors are away from their families for months, and it's always difficult. But I don't see a looming problem. I will say one thing that I think is sad is when you get back from a deployment, especially a long one like they've been on, it's usually a celebration when you get home, and you've got thousands of people on the pier. They always let the sailors off first that have had kids while they're on deployment, and so you get to meet their children for the first time. That's always a tradition. And then you have all these families waiting for them. There's all these signs and celebrations. And I think it's a little bit sad that they're going to go home. Lincoln's going to go home, and there's going to be this sort of pall over their deployment. And you know that they're going to get asked about all these conditions and how terrible it was. And that's a shame to me.
Jeff Bacon joining us here. Jeff, before we talk about more issues, though, I have to get my liberal media credentials here, and we do have the guided missile destroyer USS Benfold that was without power for 4 days as well. They had to be towed to the Philippines. What's your take on that, sir?
That's very rare. I mean, they've got 3 generators on board for redundancy, and there's I think 4 gas turbine as well for propulsion. So I'm trying to. I'm not getting a lot of news as to what actually happened, but I mean, what you said is exactly right. They're without power for 4 days, and that's without power. So they didn't have food, they didn't have electricity, and so that George Washington, before George Washington headed out to the Middle East, this is still in the Western Pacific, provided support to the crew and made sure that they were fed and they got everything they needed. My guess is that we do routine testing of all the lube oil and all of the parts that make up the machinery spaces. If they detect shards of metal in the lube oil, that's a major casualty, because that means something is shearing apart. And my guess, and I could be completely wrong on this, is that that's what they found. Is they found metal shards in the lube oil, which would contaminate all of the generators. So for a safety measure, they would have to shut those things down. I did notice that they got into Subic Bay and repaired it within a couple of days, and they're back underway again. So that's a major deal, and very rare. I don't know if I've ever heard of a ship being without power for 4 days at sea.
Jeff, please hang on. More coming up with our great friend Jeff Bacon next. Kevin Miller, 580 KIDO.
Where does that lead? And he made that very, very, I know it had to be a very difficult decision for him, but he made it. And I have just a world of respect for the man.
Jeff Bacon joining us here. Jeff, a couple more questions. What do you think it's like for the sailors in that region? Obviously, we talk about the instant communication. We're getting a ton of negative stuff here. Obviously, we want to make sure that we have truth in the media, but everything seems to be overwhelmingly negative. Does that impact those folks that are, doing the mission right now, sir?
I think it does. I will say I saw a stat just the other day that the Lincoln this year has the highest reenlistment rate of any carrier in the Navy. So to kind of keep things in context, but I think the feedback they get, because they get CNN, they get Fox News, they can watch that out on the carrier, so they hear this stuff. It has to have an impact on them. I would think if I were on that ship, I would have more of a sense of resolve and maybe anger that, hey, what's being characterized, what's being overblown here is not what you're actually seeing on this ship. Sailors, we got 5,700 people on the crew. Well, if you have a town of 5,700 people, you're going to have all kinds of personalities and people who are very positive, people who are very negative. When the negative ones get the microphone, then it starts to taint what everybody thinks about everybody else. And I would imagine that on the Lincoln there is some of that bitterness, maybe too strong of a word, but disappointment that their cruise has been phenomenal cruise. I mean, just incredible success as an aircraft carrier in combat operations is being tainted by a few people who are angry. I mean, I was out on the USS Peleliu one time, and I went incognito but this time I was out of uniform, and I went down to the laundry because I thought I can get some. This is gold when it comes to Navy cartoons. You go down to the laundry because that's a temporary duty. So I talked to a sailor down there that was just bitter about being down having to clean dirty clothes when his training was in electronics technician stuff, and I felt sorry for the guy, and then I went up to the scullery, which is where they do dirty dishes, and I talked with a young man there, and I thought, okay, this is going to be just as good. And I said, what do you think about what you're doing? He said, well, the way I see it is I clean these dishes and I make life pleasant for the sailors who are having dinner. That means they're going to do their job better. That means that a ship is going to perform better. And it was inspiring to listen to that young man. And that kind of gives you an idea that you have different opinions, and in rough conditions, you'll always have some people that are negative, but you'll also have a whole bunch of people that know why they're out there, have a sense of purpose, a sense of patriotism. And I would guess that if you look at the reenlistment rates on the Lincoln, I would imagine that their morale is much higher than what we're hearing about, and the conditions are much better than what people are suspecting.
Jeff Bacon joining us one more time. The IG Fun Run, and really the group that benefits from that, a group started here with you and others, the Wyakin Foundation, sir.
Yes, sir. For the race, it's igfunrun.com, and the organization that we're benefiting is the Wyakin Foundation, which is an inspiring organization founded right in the Treasure Valley. It serves several hundred veterans with the ultimate goal of getting them into a viable and successful career, not just a job, but a career, so they can contribute again and they can give back to the community. And it's been a great success, a huge success, named one of the best nonprofits in the nation. And their website is www.wyakin.org, WYAKIN. And Wyakin is a Nez Perce term, stands for guardian spirit.
Jeff Bacon, to be continued. Thank you for your service, and thank you for taking care of all of us here in Idaho, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, I look forward to seeing you at the IG Fun Run. I'll be talking to you before then, hopefully, and it's going to be a hoot. It'll be great to see you again.
A hoot indeed. Yes, sir. Thank you, Jeff. Take care.
Okay, you too, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Our great friend Jeff Bacon. We'll have more of your calls next. 580-KIDO. Fox News Now. 580-KIDO. Phone numbers here. 580-5436. 580-KIDO. I want to thank, again, Jeff Bacon, Congressman Simpson, and so many of you that have called in today. And again, thank our friends at Peak Health Idaho. We'll tell you about them in a minute. Let's go to a man who knows all about the peak and the health. That is TPB on 580-KIDO.
Well, I'm not so sure about the peak and the health, but I do know we've got probably the best show in town right here on KIDO. You spoke this morning about nuclear waste, and I want to address this as a real problem here for Idaho. You know, I talked about this many years ago, and how Governor Batten Andrews stopped shipments of nuclear waste to the INL for storage and eventual removal, but I forgot it was Governor Otter who abrogated the agreement by agreeing to accept 50 spent nuclear rods to the INL for research. But We all know if you give the government an inch, they're going to take a yard. Otter sold out the Bet and Andrews agreement for $20 million in INL funding for the next 5 years. And here we are once again with the nuclear waste problem at our doorstep. Much of the decision to stop the waste was because of concerns about the eastern Snake River Plain aquifer, which runs under the nuclear facility, and the possible contamination that would destroy agriculture in much of the land using the water from the aquifer. This appears to be a done deal in my mind, as Little already signed last year a memorandum of understanding with the government in July 2024. If Idaho makes this deal, it would agree to be the host to accept out-of-state nuclear fuel, spent nuclear fuel, and high-level radioactive waste. Remember, the 95 agreement said the waste would be removed from Idaho. But as usual, the government has reneged on holding up their end of the deal. Little and Bedke are getting in bed with the feds and will tell Idahoans that the Nuclear Life Cycle Innovations Campus agreement will not be a problem. I say, they will not be a problem until they are a problem. While they promise that this deal will not put Idaho's environment, including the Snake River aquifer, at risk, we all know from experience that there are no guarantees when it comes to nuclear waste and the problems that can occur if there are mistakes and accidents in its transportation. Becky says it's not waste, but fuel that can be recycled. So why do we have to revise the 95 agreement? The reason is because the agreement says we will accept spent nuclear fuel and high-level radioactive waste. If it is so safe, how about we bury it in Bedke and Little's land? It's not just the long-term storage, Kevin, that we need to worry about. It's the accidents that could occur and the serious concern about moving it in and out, hopefully out of our state, and the potential for an accident. And I heard Congressman Simpson this morning. He supported the nuclear deal on your show. But then again, he was the same guy in 2021 who wanted to breach all of the dams in western Idaho that would have destroyed the ag industry there. The real question for Idahoans is, will our politicians sell Idaho's environment for 30 pieces of silver and leave us all wondering if the waste will ever affect the Snake River aquifer, or if the government will ever hold up its promise and remove this waste, as it has never lived up to a previous agreement. So on top of that, we have the data centers overuse of our electric power grid and our water supply. We now need to worry about a new nuclear waste problem. Thank you, Governor Little, and thank you, Bedke, for all you do for Idaho and its people. I thank you very much for my time, Mr. Miller. People need to think about what's going on in Idaho and why it's happening.
Well, I think that, again, it is going on in Idaho, and Congressman Simpson said Utah is in the lead, so we'll see how that plays out. But why would you not come to Idaho when you've got the INL and they're the nuclear experts?
Yes, indeed, they sure are. They're still trying to get rid of the liquid waste that they had from years ago. Where's the government? Did they ever take it down to Yucca Flats or out to Yucca Mountain? No. It's still here. So we get to store some more of it.
Well, but we're getting a lot of big money, too, though.
Oh, yes, we need some more big money so we can expand our budget. Maybe we can double it to $28 billion in the next 7 years. Excuse me, Kevin. Well, that's bad policy as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm just saying, a lot of options, a lot of information coming out. We always appreciate you giving us the information, but besides you, and maybe there are a few others, maybe the nuclear people will jump out, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of opposition to any of this stuff. I mean, what are you finding when you talk to people?
Depends on who you talk to. talk to people in the valley, they don't say very much. Talk to people up in the ag areas, they're a little more concerned. They're selling out our environment for 30 pieces of silver, my friend.
Well, I think
That's
as long
not a
as
good
people
thing.
get their commission on it, I think they're okay with that. Look, that's not an endorsement, but that seems to be what's going on. I mean, yesterday you were talking about Micron. We just have this story that apparently now they're going to build a $10 billion research campus in Boise.
Yep, there goes the water again, my friend.
But again,
Keep thinking about all these wonderful things.
It's not that I'm disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying, it's so funny. There was a term in radio. Somebody said it. It's not them. It's us. It appears.
It could very well be, my friend.
Yeah.
Idaho's not the same place I came to 33 years ago. I understand that. But I thought the people had more common sense, and maybe there aren't enough of them left, to not allow some of these things to happen. This is what destroys states and cities. This is what happened with Colorado. This is what happens with a lot of states, where they allow the government to take over just about everything. They no longer have a say. And this is what you wind up with. You suck in the nuclear waste. You allow them to take all of your natural resources and let them dissipate into nothingness. That's not a good place to live. I came here to live and enjoy this wonderful place that we have called Idaho. These guys are going to help to destroy it.
Well, again, we appreciate the information, and that's why it's a fascinating discussion, though, when you think of, regardless of what type of political persuasion you are, it seems that everybody's partnered with these massive entities.
Yes, and who's making the decisions about it? It's going to be the corporate industry. That's what they have been doing for the last 10, 20 years. Everybody forgets where Little came from.
Yeah, but it's not just. But it's just not Little. On the other hand, it's he's been elected and reelected and continues to be. There's been no alternative.
That's exactly right. And by the same token, he gets bolstered and he has all the money he needs to keep getting elected. Who knows? Maybe he'll run for another term.
Right, but it's not just. But there has been no alternative, is what I'm saying. You go after the governor, but if people had a problem with the governor, he would not be elected and reelected and reelected. People can complain about it, but they seem to like the job that he's doing.
He hasn't had any competition worthwhile. And I think that at some point in time, that's going to come up and rear its ugly head. He's not going to like it.
Well, you can't win if you don't play. Tea Party Bob, thank you for the call. And I love Tea Party Bob. And Tea Party Bob is well-researched and does some great work. But the fact remains, much to the chagrin of a lot of folks and to the joy of many others, is Governor Little has been elected, reelected, and will continue to do that as long as he wants the job. He has astutely quelled any type of negativity, astutely any type of rebellion against him. I could say this. I had I'll just say an associate. I don't want to give this person away, that it was rumored that they were going to try to primary him. The governor and his crew reached out and had a good conversation with this individual. I've known other people that have done that. There's just not to beat an incumbent, you have to have the groundswell. The closest thing we've had to groundswell around here would be the windmills. And even that was very much muted. And it got the attention of Senator Risch, got the attention of the governor, Congressman Fulcher, our great friend, and others. And thankfully, President Trump came in and put an end to it. But when you're talking about nuclear waste, this is a huge, huge story. And what happens and again, this is not a judgment, this is an observation, is you have a story that will come out of, let's say, the Idaho Capital Sun, and they will do the story, and sometimes people will pick it up, sometimes they don't, but there's no follow-up. So you could have more nuclear material coming here. It has to go somewhere. Are you comfortable with that? Are people angry about it? Are you angry about the power bill going up? And again, we have people that, promise things and they go, I think in Idaho, and maybe you've lived in a place, you have a car, you have something, or a gym or a restaurant, and we suffer from the it's not so bads. The it's not so bads, it's not about excellence. It's about it's not so bads. So I get stuck in traffic. It's not so bad. It's so I have to pay more for this. It's not so bad. And that's the way it is. We take a look at our education. Idaho Education News has done some outstanding pieces on the test results in Idaho. It's not where they need to be. A couple hours ago, we talked about West Ada leading the area with just over 50% of the people having an English language arts proficiency. Boise, a little closer to 50%. Nampa, under 50%. Caldwell, under 50%. And clearly we invest money in this, and it just seems to go not to getting better results. And when you take a look at charter schools and home schools and Catholic schools and Christian schools and secular schools and all these other home schools, it's not the amount of money spent per pupil that gets you the result. If that would be nice, we could solve it by just throwing money at things, which is why I've always been hypercritical since the end of Sherry Ibarra's term, and I didn't have a relationship with Sherry Ibarra as far as we would have her on. We had her on maybe 3 or 4 times. Wasn't the best in media, but she had a heart of an educator, and then she was primaried by someone who is running the State Board of Education, Superintendent Critchfield now, who's a very nice person. I believe she really cares, obviously, to do that job. I was just watching the board meetings, and, man, that's brutal. But clearly, and maybe there's nothing she can do. I mean, President Trump's talking about blowing up the Department of Education, and what are we getting out of our Department of Education? Something to ponder. Before we get to Clay and Buck, before we get to Sean, before we get to Lars, before we get to Glenn. Hey, I do want to remind you about our great friends at Peak Personalized Health. I just completed my little thingy where they put the little zap thing on you, and it shows you your blood sugar, this, that, and the other. And I was in range. And as I said before, my great friend Jeremy Fricks from Primary Health was congratulatory on my weight loss. For the first time, not pre-diabetic, not diabetic. The blood sugar's under control among my many health issues. And then I decided to talk to Dr. Eric Lyle, and I said, what can we do to try to get me some longevity? Get me some longevity, Dr. Lyle. And he said, first, we're going to start with a DEXA body scan, which shows you your fat that you can see and the fat that you can't see. Do you know that there's fat on your organs? That's right. Even people that are skinny fat, bodybuilding, less fat, you have fat on your organs. That's not good. What can we do about it? How about what's in your blood? We have the biomarkers. So I've gone all through that. I continue to work with Dr. Lyle, with Sean, at the strength conditioning, and when he's not doing that, doing cardiac rehab. That's what his major was in at Utah. An incredibly local product. Love Sean. Beverly, who helps me with nutrition. And we're talking about a physician-led program, the gold standard in longevity medicine. Now, you can do the IV treatments. You can go into a clean, wonderful professional facility dealing with a doctor. That's right, a physician board certified led institution program, advanced diagnostics, continuous optimization. And the old VO2 max, again, I was squealing like a little baby. Oh, Sean, please don't let me do this. He goes, okay, we'll do it another way with the VO2 max. You've heard of Dr. Peter Attia. It's a very similar program. They're friendly, they're warm, they're inviting, and they are encouraging. PeakHealthIdaho.com. PeakHealthIdaho.com. Please call them 683-7325. 683-7325. Please tell them Kevin Miller sent you. 580-KIDO. We were actually a little ahead of this, if you will. So Micron now, in addition to everything else, they're going to build a $10 billion research campus in Boise. And I do want to thank the person that sent me this email. To correlate with that, we've got CNBC doing a profile on how Micron is not only changing Boise, but changing Idaho. And the first guy they quote is 580 KIDO's own Dave Petzo, which is pretty wild when you think about it. I mean, Dave has been covering Micron for many, many years, the good, the bad, the ups, the downs. And it's nice to see him being used as an expert, the same guy that will be on this Saturday from 8 to 10. Do appreciate his work and his insight into this. But I think this $10 billion thing has to do with the difference between New York and Idaho. In New York, and predominantly in the East Coast, with the exception of our friends in Utah, there is an anti-data center vibe going on. There is an anti-technology vibe going on. There is an anti-you name it going on, which is very, very wild. Here, whether you want to call us unregulated, more pro-tech, more pro-micron, we're seeing, obviously, what we're seeing is the ability for these companies to do business here. And so $10 billion, obviously the new Boise State president, he's got the tech background. You're going to see more of a synergy with Boise State, with Micron, probably the University of Idaho, probably with all of our universities, just because you have this enormous facility. Not only do you have the working facility, but now you have the research facility. What does that mean? More international people. What does that mean? That we're going to have, more jobs, but more everything else. Something to look out for throughout the day. And obviously, we'll update it on our website. But, and you know, who's the big winner? Two of them from the opposite political ends. Number one would be Boise Mayor Lauren McLean, that was buddies with Joe Biden, was buddies with Pete Buttigieg, and she's the quarterback of this thing from the city of Boise's perspective. But it's not just a Boise win alone. It's also a win for the state of Idaho and the legislature that approved those incentives and those continued incentives for Micron. How about this? Want a 5-star experience the next time you buy a car? Check out our friends at Treasure Valley Subaru, where you will find 5-star Google reviews after 5-star Google reviews from customers who appreciate the low-key, helpful way Rob and his crew do business. Whether you're buying a new Subaru, a better-owned pre-owned car, or a like-new truck, they make car buying easy. Maybe that's why Treasure Valley Subaru is once again voted Best of Boise for new car dealership, used car dealership, and the dealer service department. Here's something else worth 5 stars. 0% financing for up to 75 months on new Outbacks, Crosstreks, Foresters, and the 3-row Ascent. That's right, Ascent. 0% for 75 months. That's one heck of a financing deal. 0% for 75 months. And Brandon at the Treasure Valley Service Center wants to remind everyone about their free vehicle safety and maintenance inspection for all makes and models. Before your next road trip or before you send the kid off to school, bring the car in and get it checked out. No cost for a little extra peace of mind. Treasure Valley Subaru, the Auto Center Pre-Owned Superstore, Treasure Valley Trucks, and the Treasure Valley Service Center all together on the Auto Center Auto Mall and online at TreasureValleySubaru.com. Good day. God bless. Keep the faith. Kevin Miller loves you. I got it all in, everybody. 5-8.